All righty, welcome. I'm back after a couple weeks of just like needing to take a couple of weeks to not record. When I don't, with Mike out, when I don't have guests lined up, and my schedule doesn't really sync up with that, then I just don't do it. And that's after a dozen years of powercasting. Did I just say that? That was a Freudian slip. Podcasting, starting with the Powercast, which this show's actually been going on longer and has more episodes than that show did by this point. But yeah, just it's freeing to just not do it sometimes, and not that I don't enjoy it, but sometimes. So I'm here with my guest, Mr. Gags himself, John Gaglione, the guy that we used to call the mafia accountant for some reason.
Yeah, that's right. I did a very important deal, with the whole Reebok shoe dealings. It was in Massachusetts. Is my life's work right there.
So how you doing, Gags?
I'm doing really well. It's always great to catch up. So going into 2026, it'll be my 15th year with Gaglione Strength, my coaching company, my original gym in New York, and it'll also be my 20th year competing as a competitive powerlifter. I always joke that I started powerlifting before it was cool back in 2006. So, and got married last year, originally from Long Island, New York. And I just opened, it'd be my 2-year anniversary, opened up a garage gym. We were talking a little bit off air in Delaware. So a lot has changed, a lot of growth, but powerlifting, lifting weights, the barbell has still always been part of the equation.
Yeah, that's great. And you're training folks online, in person?
Yeah. So I say that kind of like hybrid is like kind of the not hybrid in terms of running, because I'm not definitely not into that, but hybrid.
Me either.
Yeah, I never kind of that running and jujitsu are things that I never partook it as a power lifter. I did have the bodybuilding stint in 2020, and if you guys are interested, we can kind of talk about that. That was just like a bucket list thing, but yeah. So there was kind of iterations and seasons of life where I tried to get myself off the gym floor.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what every good entrepreneur should do. But I'm a coach at heart. Many people may not know. I have a master's in special education. I've always been a teacher. I started teaching elementary wrestling like when I was a teenager. I started coaching at 18. So in-person coaching, I don't think I could ever give up entirely. So I still have a bunch of clients that I work with at our Delaware location. It's mostly kind of older folks. There's a lot of retirees down here. Mm-hmm. We have, people in their 50s, 60s, and even some in their 70s that are kind of training for strength. Some are competing in powerlifting. Some are just, lifting for fitness. And then I kind of work with, I kind of program all of our team members at the New York gym. They're a little bit more kind of seasoned, and I still work. I still consult with guys like Larry Wheels. That's kind of where, we first met when he was on the scene, breaking all his world records and kind of taking the powerlifting scene by storm. But I would say most of my work is done online, but I'm never going to completely. I always want to have a hub and a home base for like where my family can lift. My wife lifts. My wife and our daughter, they're going to be doing their first USAPL meet together and competing, and they're trying to kind of qualify. So my wife will be trying to qualify for Masters Nationals, and then our daughter, she just did her first Youth Nationals back in July. So, everyone's kind of involved in the lifting scene. I think that's kind of the nature of being around me. It's kind of par for the course, but I try to, make it as part of our lives the best we can, and just maybe take it have a little bit more fun in the process. Maybe not quite as serious as, it once was. But lifting is definitely still part of the equation.
Yeah, I just full transparency. Like there have been times just even owning this gym that I have not been in the gym all the time. In the last like 5 or 6 months, I'm here like 6 days a week. Not working, but actually like working out too. And it is the first time since the old days when I was lifting with a team of people that it's actually been fun for me. And, we have, and there's nobody lifting with me, but we have members in all the time, and we have a good community, a good group of people, and it's just sort of the first time that it's really like felt good in a really long time. And so I get what you mean, like get the family involved. Like my wife, I realized one day my wife had like a more of a practice of fitness than I did, like by any stretch of the imagination, and really she was running and doing yoga and whatever, and like I was not, and I'm not gonna be, but I did finally like lock myself back into, for the first time since the powerlifting days, like locked into a program and talking to people who are advising me on what to do, and like dropping some of the weight that I intentionally put on for powerlifting. It's been good. It's been really good.
I think that like that was so. I kind of alluded to it a little bit. So like in 2020, I did a little bit of a bodybuilding stint. So part of that was like I was on my way down anyway, and so I did one of my bucket list goals. And this is equipped lifting, but I think it's still pretty good. So wearing squat suits, knee reps. I wanted to I wasn't going to be a Larry Williams and break all-time records, but I always took my lifting very seriously, and I'm like, maybe I could do something that no one's ever done before. So I said on this, I ended up kind of losing weight, and I got very close to an 800-pound squat in the 242 weight class. And for those that have been following me for a while, I've squatted 1,000 pounds in training. I did 900 in a competition as a super heavyweight, and I was like, okay, 800 is kind of a pretty substantial figure still. I'm like, what if I could squat 800 pounds in multiple weight classes?
Uh-huh.
So I set this goal to squat 800 pounds in 6 weight classes, because to my knowledge and to this day, I don't think anyone's ever done it. So I was on my way down. I cut all the way down from 340 to 198. It took like 5 years. I weighed in at 197, squatted 800. I had my Chuck Vogelpol flame beanie on in my canvas suit while doing it. So it was like kind of a little bit of a throwback, a little ode to Louis Simmons.
Yeah.
And then from there, I kind of was like, I think I have some abs and I have some definition in my legs. So obviously there's a water cut involved and stuff, but I started to actually look like relatively lean. And I was like, I'm not going to go down to 181, but I said maybe I could do a bodybuilding show. And of course, in 2020, kind of the world shut down, but
yeah.
So I had a lot of time to focus on it. So it ended up being a blessing in disguise. I ended up doing the Mr. America contest, and it was a lot of fun. I had a lot more fun than I thought, but I kind of quickly realized that I enjoyed eating food too much and mom's Italian cooking and all this stuff. So that was a very short-lived, but it was a cool bucket list thing. And then, I kind of bounced back and forth between different weight classes and stuff. But going back to what you were saying before, being on a program, having some sort of performance goal, I tried to like just exercise for like a while, and just that didn't really just do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I've been kind of doing more of, single lift meets has been fun. It's a little bit less stressful. Honestly, benching in the new shirts is still very comfortable because I have a lot of shoulder issues, and I've been kind of dabbling in strict curl competition. It's kind of like a little bit of an oddball thing, but I just really enjoy competing. I don't know if putting 800 or 900 pounds on my back as often is like the smartest thing for me to do for longevity, but I love lifting heavy. I love lifting with a crew. We have a bunch of guys that I train with now. I'm actually going to be benching with them later today, and it's just fun to kind of like be on a program and kind of lift with your friends. And that's like the thing I really miss about like having those equipped sessions with the guys, and some of my trips to West Side, and learning with all those guys. And anyway, so that's kind of like what I've been up to, and just just to kind of like, it's as much as it's for the physical body, it's also like for your brain and your confidence. And I felt like when I was just exercising, I just wasn't I just felt like something was missing, so just trying to be a little bit more reasonable about my goals and stuff. I'm actually started dieting as well, like this week, and trying to get my weight back down, but trying to stay healthy, stay motivated. And I think that like having some sort of performance goal like attached to your training, I think is also helpful. At least for me, it's always been helpful to kind of keep on target. For those that maybe don't have like world record aspirations, I think it's still like good to have personal records that you're striving for. And even if they're made up, I think that could be really helpful to kind of keep you on track.
Yeah, that makes sense. You just your goals don't have to be anybody else's goals to understand, right? I mean, you just whatever works for you. Excuse me. something you were said earlier about your big weight loss all the way down to 197 taking 5 years, and this is something that I noticed a lot lately that really bugs me, is that people have unrealistic expectations of how long it's going to take to lose a significant amount of weight, even if it's even if it's 25 pounds, even, right? They have an unrealistic expectation of how fast they can get there and then what they can do when they do. Like, I think that 12-week challenges are good for motivating people, but that is it. It's a losing game if you're like sprinting to the finish, and then when you get there, it's a big party, and then you don't, care about maintaining weight loss. Or it seems like that's one of the parts of the fitness industry that's broken, is that you can get people engaged for a 12-week challenge or whatever, but 12 weeks of engagement is not enough. Like, you have to realize that you're making a permanent lifestyle change.
Yeah, I think the permanent lifestyle change is a very hard pill to swallow, and it's one of those things where even when you're working with people, because I've been working with a little bit more like kind of general fitness stuff now, and I think sometimes like what I've found sometimes is one thing that I find the powerlifting meets and stuff has been helpful is like on a record. You do need to like kind of weigh yourself in and check in on the scale if you do want to make body composition changes and all that stuff. But sometimes it's good to like not like worry like solely on that. And if you have other kind of side kind of quests and side goals that you're kind of focused on, it gives you, because what's great and bad about powerlifting is that it's very like tangible to see your progress like immediately. Were you able to add 5 more pounds? Were you able to add another rep? And I know that's something where, and at a certain point when you get to a level like kind of we did when you're in, you're squatting 600, 700, 800 pounds, the 5 pounds is not going to come super fast either anymore. But
yeah,
initially, if you have someone who's like, I have a woman I'm working with, we just did a charity bench press fundraiser at the local gym, and in the last 4 months, she's never touched any weights before. She came in strictly for like body composition and fitness. But slowly over time, she got comfortable. We have like a kid's bar, a 15 kilo bar. Mm-hmm. So now she's using like a 20 kilo bar, 45 pound bar. And she was asking about this bench press fundraiser, and we have like a max contest and a bench her reps. And I'm like, why don't you just bench the bar as many times as you can? And she jumped in and she did it, and she was so proud of herself. And it was one of those things where, for guys that have been in bench shirts and did all these massive weights, it may not seem like crazy, but for her it was a huge win just to like. So now she's still going to be focusing on her weight loss and stuff, but it just gave her something else to be proud for. Now she's got a little bit more pep in her step, and she's a little bit more motivated to keep coming back to the gym, because these weight changes can take a lot of time, and especially if you want to kind of keep it off. So it's one of those things where, depending on the person, like I might like kind of save that conversation for a later date, like once they have other like habits in place. And usually, being the strength guy, I like to tend to focus on like the lifting part first, and then kind of get to because the lifestyle change, like the eating and stuff, it could really take a really long time for like your average person. But I think that it is worth it once you kind of like get into it. And even with ourselves, we're trying to, have healthier dinners and healthier options. And I think the more you can be kind of inclusive in your community and family, I think it definitely helps. If and just kind of if your family's on board and your community is on board, I think that makes a huge difference if kind of everyone is kind of on a similar page, when it comes to lifting and, just weight loss in general. So
yeah. And I think that like the dominant philosophies around weight loss seem to stream from more the bodybuilding world, and that's not most people. That's not where most people's goals lie or should lie. And they get caught up in feeling like they need to be super strict, when that isn't really the issue. The issue is changing just basically changing the menu of things that you're choosing from, and the proportion of those things, and not, well, I'm only going to eat clean and I'm going to do this and do that. It's the same kind of thing with training, with people who coming at it from the fitness side and working more like body weight splits. I mean body part splits. That's a bodybuilding thing. That's not like a a regular person trying to get fit thing. I in the last like 6 weeks or so, I switched from the first time since the 90s, switched to a full body 3 times a week workout schedule, and it has been like a revelation. It's like, why didn't I do this before? And like you start looking back at your life and like, well, if 20 years ago I had met people who were more fitness oriented and less concerned about max weights, like this probably wouldn't be so much work right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that one thing that I've been kind of trying to implement with myself too is just kind of going back to I did wrestling and football. Growing up, wrestling was more my main thing. And wrestling kind of was my introduction to just strength training, lifting in general. And I happened to really kind of fall in love with strength and conditioning. And that's kind of like how I kind of got my started in this whole field. And one of the things that, especially now that I'm like a little bit like, less serious about competing, not really doing like full competitions anymore at the moment, I can like, do some things like, whether it's drag a sled or just get better at like do some calisthenics and just have some more general training. And that's something where when I was working with a lot of wrestlers in like the early 2000s, like that was kind of my main kind of clientele. And they didn't just squat, bench, and deadlift. They did rope climbs, they did pull-ups, they did push-ups and lunges, and just being like a little bit more well-rounded versus just like, being like absolutely strong. Can you like be like a little bit more well-rounded? Even like, you could do a little cardio. You could do like, I know it's like what a novel idea. Even just I've been really trying to focus on getting my steps up, just being outside a little bit more while it's still reasonably decent out. And I think that, like you said, then your program will change. I think like when people are like, oh, like what's your split or what, it's all kind of circumstantial where, like you said, a lot of my general fitness people, they might do more full body because it's like, I'm not going to see them like 5 times a week or 4 times a week. If I see them like twice a week, well, we're going to do like a little bit of everything and just, it's still going to be strength focused, but we might just kind of do something for upper body, something for lower body. And then some other stuff, maybe like, okay, like, some stuff might just be stuff they enjoy. It doesn't have to be like so like optimal is like all the rage. Like you got to do the but also like it's like you have to. What are things that you actually like doing that's going to get you back to the gym? So
optimal for who is always the question that I ask, because like optimal for somebody else, optimal for a bodybuilder or a CrossFitter or an Olympic weightlifter or a powerlifter. Those are all different things. Or people who have like literally other sports like running. Like we have a contingent of people here who actually run, and they're not necessarily competing in powerlifting, but they're training in a powerlifting style. But they enjoy running. They run with run clubs in the area and stuff like that. And it's just that. What's optimal for them is not going to be what's optimal for our. We have a larger contingent of tested federation competitors here. We have. I don't think we currently have any non-tested competitors. This is a totally different world than what I was dealing with.
It's really interesting, and like I said, we can kind of dive into it a little bit. So there's 2 things I want to touch on because I think I'd love to kind of touch on the culture of powerlifting because one of the things we were kind of talking about off air is just training versus career. I think that's a good type of conversation. But even before that, like I think that one thing that I think I'd like to kind of advocate for people that are like 35 plus, 40 plus, maybe you're a businessman, maybe you have kids, you just limited on time. I love powerlifting. There's a lot of elements I like about it, but I think that like people feel like they need to, if they can't do like this full on, crazy program, then why bother? And one of the things that I really love about training for strict curl, it's like you're not gonna like die from being under like 1,000 pounds. That's like the first thing. And like literally, you could do it like once a week and just get proficient at it. And like it's such like a low like cost. Like you don't need like a squat suit. You don't need a fancy like combo rack. You need a wall and like a barbell and like some weights, and you can kind of get started with it. So it's one of those things where at first it seemed kind of corny, but we had a lot of athletes get really proficient in it. My wife's been doing that as well. She's one of the top females in the country for her weight class. And I was like, okay, I'm starting to get some athletes that are like getting more proficient in this, so I should kind of like. And I thought it was going to be kind of stupid, but I kind of like, you know what? There's a lot of elements from powerlifting I like about it's, you get 3 attempts, you have this performance goal, but like the cost of like squatting like 800 or 900 and like what that does to your nervous system and your back and
Mm-hmm.
so I feel like I can kind of do a strict curl meet and I'm like I get it doesn't like have it doesn't interrupt my life so much like where you feel like the computer is like crashing and you need a few days to if you ever been in
Right.
a squat suit and had a substantial amount of weight on your back, it's just a different type of fatigue that you kind of feel. And I'm sure these raw lifters are squatting 8,000-9,000 pounds, someone like a Jesus Oliveras. So I'm sure they're kind of feeling the effects of that too. So anyways, just wanted to I think that like sometimes like sometimes it's that you could still kind of do something, but maybe you just do it differently.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's just something I wanted to kind of highlight. And then, yeah, if there's anything you want to add to that, and then I think the whole culture change in powerlifting, whether it be good or bad, it's just been really interesting to kind of see over the last, 20 years or so. Like it's been quite a shift in, what powerlifting is.
Yeah, the I think the average age of competitors dropped significantly in the last 10 years for sure, and it's probably 7, maybe a little bit longer than that. But yeah, just like there's so many more young people involved. There's so many more people, period, involved than there used to be. I definitely feel you on the geared lifting, and it doesn't even have to be, it doesn't have to be 800 pounds. It has to be whatever your 800 pounds is.
Whatever
You
you're,
know,
yeah.
and like you gear is exhausting. And the people who really poo-pooed it because it's cheating or whatever, it's like no, it's just it's a different slice of the sport. It's just different. Like hell, there are different versions of pickleball out there for heaven's sakes. It's like you can't say they're all that there's only one way to do a sport. There's usually only one popular way to do a sport, and that has changed for sure.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that squatting 650, that was my best squat ever, and I never got close to it again. I got the 600 is the closest I ever got again. Or pulling over 6, whatever in gear is exhausting. It does something different to your nervous system than lifting rod, and that's hard to communicate for people who are never going to find out. They're never going to find out because you can't just jump into equipment.
No, you definitely need like people, and so I think that's a good segue because I think like that was like one thing that it was like maybe like an unintended consequence of the equipment was that like kind of people were almost forced to train together under the same monolift,
Right.
spotting each other, stuffing yourself into the squat suit, stuffing yourself into the bench shirt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you think about it, it's like it seems all kind of silly, and if you ever, like kind of, it's like, oh, you're like hanging from the bar, and it takes you like 30 minutes just to get into the thing, get out of the thing. But I think what I really loved about that kind of era was just the difference in camaraderie, and also like even if you like, everyone has like an online program now where they have like an online coach, and in my opinion, like I think it's more online programming than coaching, but that's another kind of
I
deal.
would
But
tend
like,
to agree with you, just
yeah,
based on
like
what I've seen.
yeah, it's just like coaching is what happens where like you're actually getting feedback, you're getting cues, you're getting like insight, and I think that like I think the equipped lifters also were just very in tune with like safety and being engaged, and they were very like present. You had to be just from the safety aspect, but people were always yelling at you to like whether it's sitting back or pushing your knees out or tucking your whatever it was. It's just a very different, and to me, like that felt like more like you were on a team, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something where going from like wrestling and playing football to like more of a getting into equipped powerlifting and training in a crew. Um, I felt like that was a very like natural like kind of segue to kind of just still feeling like I was like still like an athlete in some regard, even like you can kind of argue maybe we didn't look like athletes, maybe a bunch of fat guys stuffed in squat suits, but um, that to me is just something that it's been really interesting over the years, having a pulse on going to some of these more popular gyms, not to kind of poo-poo them, but one of the things that's always been kind of disheartening to me is like some of these gyms, they're beautiful, they may have like 10 combo racks, and during a busy session, you have like literally 10 people with their headphones on, they're on their phones, they're kind of doing their own thing. They're not like working in with each other. They might even go as far to wait until you're completely done to kind of get started. So I don't know if you've kind of seen that, like kind of owning your own gym yourself, or kind of any thoughts on that. But that's something that I've kind of always been trying to maybe push back against in terms of like just like the lifting culture and how people are training nowadays.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing that I see, and I actually, I think I said this on the show a couple months ago that there isn't anybody who trains alone in our gym who could benefit from training with a group of people. And back in those days, everybody had eyes on what everyone was doing, and they had sometimes confusing, conflicting comments, but people had things to say about that might have been insight on technique or on weight selection, any of those things, and it doesn't happen as much here now. At the same time, like people are very kind to each other here, and they do pay attention to each other's lifts, even if there's three people on three different combo racks at the same time, and they're all squatting, and they could be just squatting together, but they don't. And there is a lot of focus on, you were talking about coaching versus just programming. There are some people who have good coaches, and they're recording their lifts and sending them to their coach. I do wonder sometimes to what extent that helps, because a lot of flaw in lifting after someone reaches kind of the intermediate point is just that they go up on technique. They're like a pitcher who loses his arm slot for a minute, and they can't find the strike zone. It's not that there's anything inherently wrong with what they're doing. It's just they're having a moment where they're just off. They just miss a lift because they had a break in concentration, or they just got out of position and couldn't get back into position. And I don't know what you coach about that, honestly. It's just like, oh, don't do that anymore. It's like,
Yeah.
It doesn't, what I don't know what the benefit is, except that we go through iPhone tripods like they're water around here. There's like, you're just constantly buying them. I think we're currently down to 3, but I think that we've been up as high as like 8 or 9. And everybody's doing it, so everybody needs to do it, I guess. And it's, not all of them are posting them on their Instagram or whatever. It's a lot of just going to coaches, but I don't know the value of the feedback, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think there's definitely, and I think part of that is like, so I've been, I don't know if you remember, well, I know you remember, I don't know if a lot of the listeners remember when a lot of people were back on like T Nation and stuff, but
yeah.
So I kind of like, I probably got on there even maybe before I was even like deserving of getting on there, but it was just kind of like, that's kind of like what you did. If you wanted to kind of be like, some of these, the Eric Cresseys and a lot of these prominent coaches, it was just kind of like monkey see, monkey do. I'm like, maybe I should like write for T Nation. Maybe I should, kind of get on Men's Health. So anyways, back in those days, some of my articles started to get a little bit more popular. I also was trying to communicate some of the stuff I learned from Louis Simmons and many others and try to kind of put that in a more digestible way. I started learning from guys like, Dan Green and many others that you guys, we all rubbed elbows with, back in the day. And at that time, because T Nation was such like a big kind of, meeting ground for a lot of minds in fitness and strength, I started to get people like, oh, can you do online coaching? And like, I had no system. I'm like, okay, I guess so. I can kind of send you. And I started to do like very crude, video editing and feedback and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Now there's like different applications and stuff. And at a certain point, I think you're right. Like at a certain point, this is kind of like over the years of kind of coaching people for, like I said, nearly 2 decades at this point, 6 to 18 months, the newbie gains are gone. Technique's probably pretty stable. There's probably not like, you might, unless someone's switching from sumo to conventional, they're learning a completely brand new lift, or they're going from sleeves to wraps or raw to equipped. There's probably not too much like to really tinker with, at that point. But I think what's really important is, like I said, the human connection, the interaction. When things are not going, when life stress happens, just kind of like troubleshooting, like, okay, like I had a bad workout, like should I go home? Should I scrap it? I think it starts to be less about the technique and more about like, I consider myself almost like a strength consultant sometimes, where um, how are you just navigating like life, especially if you're kind of dealing with older people where, if you have a junior lifter and like their life is like centered around training, there's no stress, they're eating a lot, they're sleeping a lot, they don't have anything to kind of worry about, they could do like, SBD 5 times a week and be at the gym for 4 hours. And as long as they're working hard, they're probably going to get pretty good results. But then for me, like a lot of times it's fun to kind of troubleshoot the people that I can only make it in the gym twice a week, or I can only, it's definitely like a lot different than training an all-time record holder or someone that's really seasoned, but I kind of have a lot of fun having those conversations and stuff. So sometimes it's a matter of just having a sounding board, checking in, and also kind of explaining to them. One of the things that I like to do personally is just kind of really understanding like what's the intention of like the next week, what's the intent, and then also kind of like looking forward. And if they do kind of YOLO or they go off plan, and then we kind of, okay, let's make an adjustment. Because I do think that the big downside to a lot of the programming and like online feedback is that a lot of times it's just a little slower than like doing it in person. With a lot of the tools now, you can be a little bit more organized, and a lot of the tools, like even like with AI and stuff, a lot of the stuff is going to be kind of able to track your volume and your PRs and stuff. Like some systems are doing it automatically, but the human interaction and kind of actually troubleshooting and having conversations, I think that's where the human element and the coach really becomes value. And then like for me personally, I try to make a point, even with our online clients, if there's a meet that they could fly to, or if I can kind of be there in person. I'm calling him like the next Larry Wheels, which may be a little bit, there's a young kid that I'm mentoring now. He has 3 American record deadlifts and 3 weight classes. He just went from a teenage lifter. He's going to do his first meet in the juniors, but he's got American records in the 242s, 275s, and 308s, and he just pulled 804 recently.
Jeez.
And so I made a point to fly out to Florida to train him. I don't know if you remember or know the name Jordan Wong. He used to kind of roll. Yeah, so Jordan still he's part of RPS and the federation that I'm involved in, and he runs a lot of great meets in Florida. And so I flew down. I was like, I'll catch up with Jordan. I'll catch up with some of those guys. And this guy's name is Martin. And I was like, I really want to make sure this kid just starts off on the right foot, and he doesn't hurt himself and all these things. Anyways, he ended up doing really well. He's since, like I said, deadlifted 800 pounds, and he's like right around like a 2,000 pound total, which is crazy because he just turned 20 years old, which is like someone's life dream. But
Yeah.
that's the world we live in. In a case like that, I try to if I can be there in person, and the game day coaching, that's really fun for me. I'm sure you remember. I'm sure you were at some of those meets. When one of the most fun things for me was like handling guys like Larry and some of the others that I did, and making those game time decisions. Like to me, like that's like where the coach really is important and shines. So like maybe all the communication leading up to that point helps you become more familiar with the athletes, so you can make those decisions. Larry was a good example. Not to keep using him as an example, but I know people know him. A lot of his records looked really easy, but he was such an explosive lifter. So I had to like really kind of pinpoint the little small deviations in his form or bar speed that the naked eye might not be able to see. And unless you've been working with someone for a long time, you might be like, oh, he's sandbagging. Oh, that was easy. And like if 5 pounds more were on that bar, it would have crumbled. But that's just the type of lifter he was. So, anyways, that's kind of like some things that I like to like kind of look out for in terms of on the powerlifting side of things. But I think you hit the nail on the head. I think at a certain point, I think once your technique is kind of good enough, it's really just about accountability and developing the relationship with the person and just kind of adjusting like as needed. Because, your technique is only going to be so good at a certain point. And then you just have to it just takes time. It just takes time to get stronger and bigger and, and all those things. So.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm also speaking a little bit from my perspective, because from a technical standpoint, I was a really good technical lifter. I just wasn't the strongest, and those things they don't equal each other. Like they rely on each other, but they don't equal each other for sure. Actually, one of the greatest frustrations of my entire lifting career was way back in the day. I think it was 2009. We had Louis in the house here for a seminar, and he was doing like form checks technique checks, whatever. And I was most concerned about my deadlift because it was sort of the most challenging thing to me, other than wearing a bench shirt, which I never was comfortable in a bench shirt. Not 1 minute of one day was I ever comfortable in a bench shirt. But I had him look at my deadlift, and he's like, "Yep, you're fine." It's like, you don't have any. There's no critique. There's nothing you can do to help me. It's like, no, your form is fine. You just need to get stronger. It's like, well, fuck. That's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear there was just a flaw that if I just correct it, I'm gonna put 50 pounds on my deadlift, and it was not the case. It was not true.
Yeah, it's funny sometimes where you just think it's like anything else. You want there's gonna be this one trick, and then
one weird trick.
Yeah, and that's just not like how most things work. A lot of times it's like, it's consistency over time with weight loss, with strength training. It's like, it's probably going to take longer than you think. One thing I think it's good to know with any goal, I think we overestimate what we could do in the short term, but we underestimate what we could do long term. So when it comes to weight loss, strength, like, when I first started lifting, I wasn't thinking about like I'm going to squat 900 pounds. Like it's just. But you do it long enough. You do it for 5 years. You do it for 10 years. Mm-hmm. You get pretty good. And sometimes you kind of surprise yourself. But yeah, I think then people I think the hardest thing this day and age is that when we're consuming content, whether it's you're an entrepreneur, you're a lifter, fitness people, we're seeing like the best of the best, and then we get really warped with like, what we should be like working towards. Mm-hmm. And we just see a snapshot. We don't see like everything kind of beforehand, and that's if the photos aren't edited and photoshopped and all this other nonsense. Right. But because a lot of times it's like literally like this is not like an attainable physique because it's not like real. But but yeah, I think it's just going to take a lot longer. But if you put in the time and you have a good system in place, you just kind of repeat the play and you keep going and just keep getting a little bit better. You troubleshoot, you get a little bit better. But I think that's where like kind of having a coach to kind of like consult with to kind of have realistic expectations. But what's challenging is sometimes you have coaches that might kind of give someone unrealistic expectations and just to kind of sell them. And that's I see this a lot more in when I was a little bit more in tune with bodybuilding, like when I was competing at the time. I saw some people that so I don't want without getting too much to personal details, like, so my wife did some bodybuilding and physique competing before, we got together, and she's had thyroid problems ever since because she kind of followed a coach's advice. It was not good. So she got ready for the show, and now she has to like, be on these medications and stuff long-term. And it's just like kind of, it's just really unfortunate and it sucks. And, she's doing a lot better, like doing more, she still looks great. She just dropped a weight class, and so she's making her 148, debut for nice. But yeah, it's just cool. It's just different goals and whatever. And she still looks great. She's lean and she's strong. And but yeah, like the bodybuilding like really like messed her up. And it's just like she just followed what the coach was saying, and it just wasn't like great advice. And a lot of people just like they're trying to be a good client, and it's kind of scary because we're dealing with people's bodies, and so you do the best you can, and hopefully you just have good communication with the coach. But not every coach like is equipped to kind of work with these types of clients, and they may not understand the long-term ramifications of what they're prescribing. So
yeah, that makes sense. I do wonder if there like what percentage of bodybuilding coaches take that into consideration. And the other thing is, though, just other observation is that bodybuilding coaching seems to me to be such a black box. Like you don't really know what's going on a lot of the time with how people are being programmed or what they're being told to take or whatever. If it's based on just a lot of bro science, or if there's really something going on, and there the whole issue with diuretics, like killing people, and it just seems like there isn't enough like solid knowledge about in general what's going to happen to people when they go through these extreme measures, really, to try to win, or like win a local show, for heaven's sakes. I mean, it can be a bit much, I guess.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I know like we're talking about bodybuilding right now, but even like in the powerlifting context. So one thing that's so obviously like when you kind of it's food and potentially drugs and they said diuretics and stuff. So I think educating yourself is important. One thing that I've been pondering a lot lately, you kind of mentioned like with this new age of the tested lifter walked out stiff bar. I mean we're seeing lifts done raw with supposedly natural and all these things that rival like good equipped lifts from back in the day. I mean, these people, there's people in like there's like the guy Austin Perkins. I don't know if you kind of how much you follow. Squatting 700 pounds at 165. I mean, that's a good lift. In knee wraps and a squat suit. So, and I'm not saying him specifically, but what I've kind of seen, we went from this very popular kind of West Side approach with a lot of variation, a lot of bands and chains, fairly, more modest or lower volumes on certain things, maybe not the accessories, but for like the main lifts, kind of lower volume, higher intensity, more variation. And now it's like maybe there might be accessories, there might not. It's mostly with a straight bar. Some of these, I don't know if this is the case in your gym, but I've heard some of the female lifters are benching like 5 times a week. Some of the squatting 3 or 4 times a week. And I just also kind of wonder, especially for like the stronger athletes, like what are the ramifications of overuse? Are we just speeding up their like kind of genetic potential? Are they just reaching their ceiling sooner, or are there going to be downstream effects for when these teenage lifters and when these junior lifters are our age or older? What is that going to do orthopedically? Because I don't know about you, but I can't imagine putting a straight bar on my back more than once a week, even just for my shoulders, let alone my spine. So I don't know. These are just things I think about, and I think that a lot of these younger coaches, sometimes it's good to like be a little naive because then like you don't have like a limit put on you, but also like this isn't just like a video game where you could hit the reset button and like this is like your body and you have one. So, and this is taken from someone, I put 1,000 pounds on my back. I've been 340 pounds. I've done a lot of not so smart things for my health, but so I don't know. It's just one of those things where I think sometimes coaches, if you have like a 20-something-year-old coach, they're not going to have the life experience where I think experience is important, but I still try to like stay up on like the current trends. But I also wonder what's going to happen like 10 or 20 years down the line, or even 5 years down the line, if like, because we don't really have data like on like, this is a whole brand new thing. The weights that these kids are doing, these kids are squatting 800, like I said, I mentioned the kid. So my kind of goal with someone like Martin, who's like, he's deadlifting 800 pounds at this point, just try to keep him as healthy as possible. And I did this with Larry too, try to keep him as healthy as possible for, hey, like there's risk in this, but at some point powerlifting, you're going to be done and you're going to want to be in one piece. Have fun with it, but also just the kind of, with great power comes great responsibility. The spider, it's really, and the stronger you get, and the more influence you have over it, and the same thing with with popularity and stuff like. I think people just need to be more careful with what they put out into the ether, because these are people's bodies. We're talking. I don't know. These are just not to be like the old grumpy guy, but these are just things I think about from someone that's been in the sport for a long time, and I love it. I think people should do it, but I think you just need to proceed, with caution too. I don't know. So that's just kind of stuff that's been on my mind lately with seeing these young kids just do incredible things, but I just kind of wonder what are the downstream effects when they're no longer lifting or they're no longer competing anymore, I should say.
Yeah.
So.
The break point on competing for me was when it started to affect the rest of my life. Like when I was, banged up and couldn't do the things I wanted to do, couldn't sleep because my shoulder hurt, those things. It's like, it's not worth it to me anymore. But past that point, but when the younger lifters, I think the point is that like there isn't quite enough focus on injury prevention, and just like back in the geared era, the younger lifters, they some of them could do fantastic things and then just be gone because of not just because their like life changed or whatever, but because they were injured in such a way that they couldn't come back and hit the levels they hit before. So there was no point for them to go on. And I think I see that now too in the tested federations. You're 22, 23-year-old lifters who are really coming up in the sport, and then they are hitting it awfully hard, and they're handling weights that their bodies are not quite ready for because they've been training for, some of them 2, 3, 4 years, and they don't have a long enough base, and they just don't hold up overall. And then that has to compete also with the just changing focus, like they want to do something else. They realize that they're giving X number of hours a week to powerlifting when they could be doing something else. I think it is hard for a young lifter to come up, be successful, and have longevity in the sport.
Yeah, and I think it's for me hard to kind of think about that when you're maybe 18 or 19, but like, do you want to be a flash in the pan? Do you want to do this a long time? So I kind of like recognized like after I did my bodybuilding stint, I was kind of missing it, so it was kind of cool that I had that time off. And the other thing I kind of realized, like, oh, my shoulders feel like better. My you just kind of like like it's just like different. Something like where going back to like athletics, where you kind of have this like general foundation, and I think that powerlifters make it like almost too specific too soon. And like a lot of us, we probably grew up with Arnold Encyclopedia. We just kind of did more like kind of, whether the workouts were good or not, we just did a lot of like just general stuff, maybe PE, calisthenics, whatever. We didn't just like go to like SBD like from the get-go. We had a little bit more general exposure to things. So I think sometimes just maybe taking some time off. So one of the things I like to do with our guys too is sometimes it's just like, and some listen, some don't, but like, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 1 week, it could be 3 or 4 weeks. Just do like some machines or maybe they like strongman training. Maybe they like, maybe they like to. We have a girl. She likes to do like swimming and running and stuff. So when she's like not competing, like she'll do a little bit more of that, and then she'll kind of come back to powerlifting. And again, it's like if you're not like trying to break records, which most people are, again, calling a spade, most people are not going to break an all-time world records.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with like coming back to it at a later date and maybe having a little bit like have strength on the back burner for a little bit, and maybe you have a little bit more endurance or like body composition focus. I think that's always a kind of I try to encourage some of our lifters, drop a little body fat after a meet, maybe do a little bit more like up your cardio a little bit, just change your training stimulus. I think it's also just good for your brain just to kind of do, and then you kind of miss some of the heavy lifting. You kind of come back to it. So just kind of spreading out the training plan a little bit, so you're not always like, I don't know if you were guilty of this, but sometimes it's like, okay, like when's the next meet? You finish a meet, when's the next meet, or you get right back to it like kind of too soon.
Yeah.
And that can kind of cause its own problems, especially, maybe your spine's like, was under a lot of stress, or you have some like nagging injuries that need to be taken care of. So that's just something where, thinking a little bit more long term, and whether it's your training partners, a sounding board, a coach, try to have like a little bit more of like the long game in mind. Which it's easier said than done, but it's good to like think about these things. If your goal is to do this for a long time, because ultimately my belief is that if you can kind of stay in the sport longer or do this longer, you're gonna have a higher success.
Yeah. You have more of a ceiling if you hang in.
Yeah, you're just spreading it out. So again, my kind of feeling is, I don't know if you ever had a lot of conversations with Brett Contreras, but we've had some conversations just about like kind of physiology and programming, and when you increase your frequency, you're basically just kind of like speeding up the cycle. His belief is, and I'm paraphrasing, but if you increase your frequency, you also potentially increase like your risk. So my kind of, if I had to like kind of put my money on it or make a assumption, I think the higher frequency lifters will just have a higher burnout rate. If like, but also I think that they will hit their like potential like peak like sooner. So like you said, like a lot of, I think, we saw, people like, Stan Efferding is a good example. Like he hit a world record in like, I think in his 40s. We're seeing like those lifters kind of, they might hit their peak at like 25 instead of 35, That's kind of if I had to guess, that's kind of my Um, that's kind of where, but I don't know. I could be wrong, but that's just kind of I think that you're going to see a lot more turnover for that style of training. But who knows?
Yeah,
Uh,
I think I'm paraphrasing Ed Cohn when I say like you only have
yeah,
X number of X weight deadlifts in your body, and and so if you burn them all at the beginning or you burn them all in training or whatever, then you just don't have them anymore. That I'm heavily paraphrasing here, but you get the idea. That you just have to manage. You have to essentially, like, it's load management. Basically, it's like load management for a longer term career in powerlifting. There's just not the powerlifting has not gotten into its load management area. I think. To run things back for just a second, you said you were on T Nation early. Like, when were you there?
probably like 2012 or
Oh,
so,
okay.
2012, 2013. Yeah,
Okay.
so like oh man, it's so funny like when you start kind of like throwing names out there and stuff. Do you remember Peak? I think it was Peak Fitness in New York City. It's no longer a thing, but anyways, there was a lot of places. I was kind of pretty connected also to just I would say general fitness. You had like people like Cressy and Mike Boyle, and because I was
Mm-hmm.
training athletes at the time, so I was kind of like I felt like I was in two worlds where I was in like the powerlifting world was like my personal playground, but then like my professional world was more strength and conditioning, those sorts of things. So I kind of rubbed elbows with different people. Um, yeah, like in 20 between like 2010 and 2012, I was kind of really up and coming. So like I went to do internship, observational internship at Boyles and Cressy's. Tony Gentilcore was there at the time, and I think that you know Tony pretty well.
Yeah.
Um, and I was just trying to like learn from as many people as possible. I was visiting a lot of gyms. I did my first trip to Westside Barbell. I think in 2012. I remember when like Louis Simmons like answered my email. I was like I couldn't like believe it. And then slowly over time, I just got more into kind of powerlifting, and I went back to Westside in 2017 for I spent a week there, but yeah, in that time frame, there was like a lot of there was like the powerlifting people, and there was more like the general fitness people and the strength and conditioning crowd,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just like one of those things where I felt like um, I don't know, it was kind of like a little bit of your stamp of approval. So at the time, I was trying to make a name for myself, get more established,
Yeah.
and that's where all the great coaches, the Dan Johns of the world, and the Cressys, the Boyles, and and all those people like Jim Wendler, like everyone was just kind of on T Nation. So I felt like that was just a natural, I don't know. If nothing else, I kind of met a lot of people through there, and I think a lot of us before social media, like the forums and different things, that was just kind of how you communicated and got ideas from people, and it was cool. It definitely has changed over the years. And yeah, so I was kind of like in between like different circles, and then slowly, I'd say like around like 2013, 2014, like when raw lifting started to really emerge as like the prominent like force in powerlifting. Then
Mm-hmm.
a lot of my wrestlers started to graduate, and I was like, so in 2012 was like our first like kind of powerlifting competition like as a team. So I was like, hey, why don't you guys just do this meet with me? Like, you guys aren't wrestling anymore, and that was kind of like how our team was formed. And then kind of the rest was history. And I think around like 2014 was when kind of Larry was getting on the scene, and we went to Boss Barbell Club, and we had the meets at Jesse Burdick's gym, and it's just there was a lot of great times in California. I'll say a lot of the big meets were on the West Coast, as you know.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of history there. Like a lot of the world records were broken on the West Coast, and I believe like a lot of the meets that you were a part of and everyone else, like that was I think that really kind of put powerlifting in a different level in terms of participation, in terms of awareness. Um, it's just really interesting to see like kind of where it's gone and how the culture has shifted. But it was a really fun time to be like in the sport.
It's funny. Most of the people who are members of this gym have like like no idea about any of that history, about my history, about Mike. They just don't know. It's like, wait a minute, you guys did a podcast before, or you do a podcast now? That all our members don't even get that this happens. My experience with Teen Nation started in like 2003, and really kind of just went through probably 2006, 2007 ish. But like I was even part of a splinter group that went to another site, and that included Eric Cressy and Tony Gentilcore and those, and Joel Marion and those, a lot of people that are very recognizable now, like people who made names for themselves because they stuck in it. And when I started, I had no intention of being involved in the industry at all. I was just trying to lift, I was just trying to figure it out. Especially, and I was like, 40 almost at that point. And so actually I was 40 that year. Yeah. It was a very late in life lifter as a serious lifter, that was over, in like 10 years, 10, 12 years. It was like, that's the most I could do. I think the most we were talking about the number of meets, like I think the most meets that I did in a year was 3. And that was a lot. That was like a whole lot.
Yeah. I think that especially if you're really kind of like hitting the gas, like as you get older, like maybe you have like one serious meet and then one like kind of
fun. Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of like, and then again, with the single lift stuff, I think you can kind of compete a little bit more often. But yeah, full competition's a lot. Once you kind of, especially when you get some serious weight and you start getting a little mileage on you. Yeah, I see some of these people like, you look at their open powerlifting and you're like, how are you still? But some people just, they have good recovery genetics or they just really take care of themselves. But
yeah,
it's a lot.
Yeah. So you were talking about strict curl, and you had told me a few days ago that you're doing a strict curl meet out here someplace, or in LA.
It's going to be at Larry Wheel's gym. It's in one gym. It's Claremont. It's really kind of. It's so like funny how So little bit of background. 2020 was a really interesting time because people were just like looking for stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to like give Larry credit for this, but I think he was certainly part of it. I don't know. Do you ever follow Nick Strength and Power? It's a YouTube channel, like kind of bodybuilding news. And anyways,
No.
popular new YouTube channel. It's mostly bodybuilding stuff, but he also sometimes he'll kind of report on strongman and powerlifting and it's just kind of like a strength and fitness news channel kind of thing. But so Larry, among others, were like kind of just, it was one of those things where like he just was like, I'm gonna max out on strict curl, and it got like went kind of viral, and then all these different people, these NFL people, were like doing strict curl, and like it was like they had people over. It was just kind of like a thing for a little bit, and strict curl has always been kind of around. CT Fletcher like had the American records for like at one point. So besides like the ISCA, which is like CT Fletcher's kind of meet, that was kind of like a once a year kind of thing. And there's a guy in San Diego, Dave Depew and Grinder Jim. And actually,
yeah,
I don't know if you ever stay in touch with AJ Roberts, but he kind of.
You know what? I should. I should, because he was part of that early group of people. Yeah, I should.
So I'm actually my plan is to connect with AJ because I've been more in touch with him because he's starting to run meets and coach a little bit more. But AJ is going to also kind of link up with us in January 17th when we go down. Anyways, just kind of one of those guys that's like well connected in like that West Side community, and he's a good dude and someone I consider a friend. But so all of us, this different federation started popping up in 2021, and I had one of my guys, his name is John Archibald. He's like, I want to do the strict curl meet, and I'm like, I did a power curl meet like when I was like 18 in this WNPF organization, but I was like, I don't really know how to prep for it. I don't even know if it's safe. I don't know if you're going to tear your bicep, but
yeah, seen plenty of those.
I'm like, I guess we'll try and see what happens and hope, hope that. So anyways, he ended up doing pretty well. I think he curled like 165, 170. It was like a big number, and they started to host they had some strict curl meets at the Arnold. So we've always been going to the Arnold. That's a whole other thing. We've been going to the Arnold for powerlifting for years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I felt like kind of a little bit like washed up. I'm like, now I'm coaching people for strict curl at the Arnold. This seems kind of lame, but anyways, I digress. So we had Big John started to do really well. So now fast forward, Big John recently curled 210 pounds. He's one of the top curlers in the country.
Jeez.
We have another guy, Ed Joseph. Ed Joseph has records in different federations in the 120. He's curled 128 at 123 body weight, which is crazy. And then he's done around like I think 135 and like the 132 weight classes. So he's done over a body weight curl in 2 different weight classes. My wife's curled over 100 pounds. We have another girl, Hannah, is curled over 100 pounds. So anyways, it's starting to be like more competitive, and there's like this world championships in Virginia Beach. One of the things, so most of this is just a whole aside note. Not that we need to get into this whole kind of tested, untested thing, but what I kind of noticed for strict curl is that majority of the meets are drug tested meets only. The vast majority are drug tested, so which is cool, and I have no problem with it. But now with the advent of peptides and TRT and all this stuff, I just think it's good to have options for everyone, because then also it kind of limits like cheating and stuff, because it's one of those things where, I think for sport and for records, and obviously, as you could take that stuff too far, but I do think there is like a medical, and that, again, that's a whole other can of worms. A lot like someone like myself, like I just want to have fun. I don't want to have to worry about like getting my underwear checked, pissing in a cup. Like I just want to. I'm seriously, it's like not to throw shade at any federations, but again,
The underwear thing is the strangest shit ever.
It's like it's always the thing I bring up, because it's like we could change the rule book, guys. It's totally, you guys have like, it's really not, but so like for me at this point in my like life, being 20 years into competing, like I'm just not interested in like doing that personally. And most of our lifters they just want to do this for fun.
Yeah.
So we started a strict curl federation in the strict curl division in the RPS that we're getting. We have a lot of meets we're having one in New England. We're having some in New York and Delaware. Looking to potentially do one in Kentucky. But yeah, we wanted to bring one to Larry Wheels Gym. So we have some of the top strict curl. We have a couple of guys curling over 200 pounds. We have a couple of guys that are in the lighter weight classes that can curl like their body weight or more. We're trying to get a few more females on the roster, but it's just kind of, again, it's an exciting thing. Anyone could really get an easy bar, find a wall. It's very accessible. You don't need calibrated plates. You don't need to buy $200 knee sleeves. You need an easy. Most people like find an easy bar for free, like like in their home. Usually, an easy bar. I don't know if you follow Massonomics, but they say like easy bar just appears in your home gym. You don't even have to do anything.
We have one. I have no idea where it came from.
It's like
I know I didn't buy it, so
it just appears. So like you don't even need to get a bar. It's just gonna the bar's gonna find you. But anyway, so we wanted to provide a meet that was more accessible to people. You don't need a lot of time. You could train it once a week. You don't need to like if you have knee problems, back problems. So it's just been something that's been really fun, and we wanted to have. So we're gonna, and I think obviously Larry is a big name, so we just want to promote more strength sports. And one of the things that we're trying to do is just kind of make it like a lower barrier of entry. It's still competitive. We're still going to keep records. You can still we're going to have a nationals for strict curl next June in Newcastle, Delaware. So you can take it as serious as you want, just like powerlifting. But again, it's a lower cost on your body, and it's just like fun. It's just fun. You can just it's like okay, like how much just like how much you bench. It's like all right, well, how much can you curl, and just kind of like do a fun thing. And what I was very surprised on, because of the nature of some of the bars and stuff. A lot of the competition bars, you could have a little bit more of like a pronated grip. And so your biceps are a little bit less exposed, and it's relatively, again, there's risk in anything you do, but in terms of like worst case it happens if you strain your forearm or bicep, you kind of set it down. You're not going to like have 1,000 pounds like topple. So even the strongest guys that are curling 200 pounds, the absolute weight is so much lower. So I just think psychologically it's just like not as taxing on you. Like getting under like a big squat, it's like it's like you got to be like up for that.
Yeah.
So there's like a psychological toll and there's a physical toll to like the spinal compression. So I think, again, a lot of people think it's my buddy Chris. He owns Bergen County Barbell. He's a really good multiply lifter, and he busts my chops all the time. He's like, there's nothing more lame than competitive biceps curling. But it's a fun thing, and like I've been enjoying it. My wife's really good at it. We have a bunch of people that are kind of nationally kind of ranked, and it'll be our first one on the West Coast. We want to try to do more stuff at Larry's gym, because we think that like now he's like he's kind of like transcended powerlifting a bit at this point. I think he's more in like mainstream.
He's more mainstream now for sure.
And it's kind of cool that, powerlifting and strength sports is kind of his roots. We want to kind of like expose a little bit more of a general audience to like, hey, this is something you could do, help with your muscle mass, bone density, whatever. It's something fun. Because I think at the end of the day, like if it gets people to the gym and they're excited about it, and in terms of like that meet on January 17th, we're going to have some of the best strict curlers in the country. So it'll be like a good show. And what's nice about strict curl is you're not going to be there all day till like 9 o'clock at night. It's like quick. It's very fast. And that's something that I've kind of said a while. I think if powerlifting really wanted to be like a spectator sport, he's got to somehow figure out a way to shorten the competition or do like single lifts type stuff because it's just too long. It's just hard to follow. But something like strict curl, which is a single lift thing, and because the absolute poundage is lower, it just makes the event. You don't need 1,000 pounds worth of plates.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you need 200 pounds, maybe 220, and you just don't need a lot of spotters. It's very safe. You're not because sometimes even when you get to those 1,000-pound squats, the spotters are in danger too.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen somebody basically lose part of a finger to just.
It gets really sketchy, and that's one thing I'm just not a big fan of. There's a lot of things I like about tested powerlifting, the IPF, but this combo rocks is not like my favorite thing for safety, for big guys. It's not, but I don't know. This is not a lot. If someone kind of like tears something with a big squat, there's just not a lot. But yeah, we're real excited for it, and like I said, it's just there's a lot of history in California, and we're just hoping to bring more strength sports to the area and just more stuff. And I think using Larry as kind of a vehicle to help promote it and just get more people involved, like just getting under the barbell. That's kind of like our goal with like our events, to just kind of make it just a little bit more fun, a little bit more accessible, to the average person.
I think it's kind of a throwback to the whole the odd lifts where powerlifting and strongman came from in the first place. And I know that APA used to do strict curl a long time ago.
That's so funny. So do you want to know what my last competition was? An APA strict curl meet we did at Mr. America. So it's so funny because they're apparently, I didn't know they were still around. But my buddy, I just met him, Robbie, he's like, yeah, it's like APA, we're like the oldest federation. I'm like, I didn't know you guys were still around. So, they use like the regular, like kind of easy bar, and it was a lot, it was a lot harder. But it was a lot of fun. But yeah, it was just funny because I'm like, I didn't know the APA was like still around. But yeah, apparently they're like the oldest federation, and they were the first, cause I was looking at some of their international records. They're pretty like serious. So it must have been from like back in the day, some like crazy, I don't know,
genetic freaks,
some Russian like freaks or something, just like we're curling like 200 pounds or something. I'm like, but it was cool, it was fun. Like I said, the psychological and physical cost is just so much lower.
It's lower, yeah.
But you could just still have fun and lift some weight and not be afraid that you're going to like cripple yourself. So, But
yeah, it makes sense. Well, I mean, I have no reason in my mind why it wouldn't just, grow in popularity. If you think about in the last like 5 to 7 years, hand lifting has gotten to be a big thing. And like, that's more of a strain than a strict curl would be. It seems like a strict curl, the barrier to entry is a lot lower. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on with me. Where can people find you, John?
Yeah, I'm at Gaglione Strength on all the social medias. But yeah, just give us a follow. Mostly active on social. We also got a pretty active YouTube channel, more longer form stuff. And we also have a podcast called Powerlifting for the People. And we kind of talk all things, strength related. Because at the end of the day, we just want to make strength training and powerlifting accessible for as many people as we can. Like I said, not just for like the genetic freaks of the world, but just for like the everyday people as well. And I appreciate you coming on. It was great to kind of catch up with you. And like I said, a lot of great memories we kind of shared together.
Yeah.
On the West Coast, and I'm excited to kind of be coming back soon.
I think we should have coordinated a wardrobe because I was wearing a shirt that did not have sleeves before I sat down here, but I changed my shirt and I've made a hideous mistake. Anyway, I am at Jim McDonald, all the social media. This show is 50% Facts, where percent is a word and 50 is just numbers. 50% Facts is a Spreaker Prime podcast association with iHeartMedia on the Obscure Celebrity Network. And I will talk to you again soon. Thanks, man.